Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the hearing on liquor permit renewal objections. I am happy that we have folks who have taken out time to either tune in or come down in person. And it is very exciting whenever we host hearings that we have a strong and engaged community into an issue that I know is important to many of our neighbors and all of our citizens. I want to remind everyone that my legislative aide, Annie Marsico, who's sitting just behind me, will be accepting speaker slips until 5:30. And so if you have not yet filled out one, you can find one at the entrance of chambers, and she'll come down and pick those up from you. Currently, I believe we have 4 speakers, and some of which are individuals that I've talked to out in the community, and very glad that they took me up on my invitation to come down tonight and making time for it. I really appreciate it. I want to thank and introduce Councilmember Craig, who has joined us, and I understand he has other important commitments and may not remain with us, but it's important enough for him to have attended, and so I want to thank him. Additionally, City Attorney Rick Pfeiffer, who is also with us, and glad to have him here. He is always quite a great person to guide us through this process, and it is my second round of liquor objections, and so his office and himself, he's been just a great resource for this process. Also, we have Attorney Bill Sperlaza, who's Assistant City Prosecutor and a point person for the objections for the liquor permit renewals, and also Lieutenant Mark Lang and Sergeant Stan Latta and Detective Alan Brown, all of the Columbus Division of Police Vice Section. And again, I want to thank the community members who have also made an effort to be here with us this evening. I want to give a little bit of the background in terms of this evening's liquor permit renewal process. We currently are in the midst of the annual renewal objection process, and many of you have received letters and notifications of the process getting started. There are 8 major steps in the process: identifying the problem establishments, investigating the establishments, evaluating the evidence, and the city attorney's recommendations being sent to my office based on evidence. Then at that time, the council members consider adopting a resolution, and that resolution, the request for hearing, is sent to the Ohio Division of Liquor Control. The Division of Liquor Control holds a public hearing to allow the city and permit holder to present evidence, and possible appeal of the decision made by the Division of Liquor Control is then the clock starts ticking at that point. We have already begun the first step of the process, and that is establishment identification. We've solicited letters in every meeting that I've had the opportunity to attend, and as much as we can, we solicit letters from neighborhood groups, and many of you have taken us up on that and sent in very good information. Want to say that some have gone the extra mile in providing tons of information related to what they are seeing for the establishments in their neighborhood. So I want to thank those folks who have gone above and beyond just the naming and the address. I want to thank them for their hard work with that. Again, having the opportunity to speak to block watch groups and area commissions, I hope that we have been as informative as we can about the process, and hope that that continues to be the way in which folks have the opportunity to learn about it and can get engaged in an issue that impacts their community. We've been collecting information from residents since about July, and we hope to hear from many of you even after this meeting. We're hoping to continue to accept letters until September 21st. We selected September 12th as the date of the hearing, and it's easy to remember that the deadline is September 21st, just reversing the numbers and the date. So we want to make it, again, a very easy and engaging process for the community. During tonight's hearing, we'll hear from the city attorney's office as well as the Division of Police. They will explain their role and further explain the process and how the objection process really operates. And so with that, I'll start over by turning the hearing over to Detective Brown and the Assistant City Prosecutor Bill Sperlaza, and I already asked for apologies if I mispronounce his name. They'll begin to talk about the investigation and the legal process.
Chair Mills, if I might just make one comment.
Absolutely, City Attorney, please.
This whole process is a coordinated effort among various city agencies, including the legislative authority. From our point of view, the city attorney's point of view, it's very important to note that if the City Council should adopt a resolution objecting to the renewal of a liquor permit, I, as the Chief Legal Officer, in the words of the statute, must have accompany that resolution a statement that, in my opinion, the objection is based upon substantial legal grounds within the meaning and intent of the law. What I say by that is we have many people who complain about adverse negative effects of some permit holders. But when we go after their liquor permit, it has to be within the confines of the statute. So I will not sign a letter that says we're going after somebody willy-nilly. We have to have strong evidence, and that's what we do. And I'll now turn it over, Chair, to Bill Sperlazza, who is one of our very good lawyers in our zone group, and one of his responsibilities is this.
Thank you, City Attorney Pfeiffer. I'm glad you added that because, as you know, we received quite a few complaints, and we just have to make sure that we're clear about the expectations that the community has once that letter has been received.
Thank you, City Attorney Pfeiffer. Councilmember Mills, thank you. As Councilmember Mills indicated, there are 8 major steps involved in the permit renewal objection process. The first step really is identifying problem establishments. There are 2 sources that problem establishments come to light for us. The first is through law enforcement, primarily the Columbus Police Department, but law enforcement conducts their own investigations through their various departments and identifies problem establishments that may require a liquor permit objection. The second, the second group, the second way that we identify problem establishments is through various area commissions, civic associations, neighborhood groups, and individual citizens. So you can see on the slide here, a letter was sent out in July of this year indicating that we are looking for suggestions from those various citizen groups of potential problem establishments, establishments that we would then further investigate to determine if we have the sufficient evidence to object to the permit. Now, the letter itself contains what the Ohio Revised Code gives us as a grounds for objection. There's really 2 different ones there. And to paraphrase just a bit, we're looking for establishments that operate in a manner that shows a disregard for laws, regulations, or ordinances. And secondly, those establishments that are so located, they cause a substantial interference in that neighborhood with public decency, sobriety, peace, and good order. But it is through area commissions and various citizens and through our local law enforcement that we identify problem establishments. Once those establishments are identified, we go into investigation period. And the investigation is primarily conducted by the Columbus Police Department. They are the primary investigative agency. However, other agencies such as Division of Fire, Health Department, Code, and various other departments are also involved. At this time, I will turn to Detective Alan Brown to give us a little bit more insight on how Columbus Police conducts their investigation.
Thank you. The Columbus Division of Police Narcotics Bureau Vice Section currently investigates prostitution, gambling, liquor law violations, and other related crimes. Included in this investigation is the evaluation of liquor establishments for objection to the renewal of a permit, the objection to the issuance of a permit, and the objection to a transfer of a permit. Part of the investigation includes violations of state and city laws, liquor laws violations, health code violations, fire code violations, building code violations, and other licensing violations. It includes how many dispatch runs that the police department receives for that particular location, and it also includes police reports and any other conditions that affect the peace, sobriety, and decency of the community. And then we put that together and Then that is reviewed by the city attorney's office. As Mr. Pfeiffer has mentioned earlier, he must find that there's substantial grounds for the objections. And then we go forth with the hearings, which Mr. Spalazzo will explain in detail.
Thank you, Detective Brown. Once our investigation is complete and we've established what our evidence is for a potential establishment, we would move then to evidence evaluation. At that point, myself, along with members of the Columbus Police Department and Detective Brown, will meet and go through each potential problem establishment and review the evidence involved and make a determination as to whether or not we think we have legally sufficient substantial evidence to move forward with an objection. The types of things we are looking for can to some degree be broken down into two categories. One would be your code and permit type of violations. These would be code violations, health code violations, fire code violations. This would also include liquor permit violations such as underage sales after hours, and those types of things. The other category would be criminal activity, criminal violations. And that can include anything from loud noise to drug sales, drug use, prostitution, violence, assaults, even at times shootings. So we would look at both of those categories. And those establishments that display the most of those particular categories are the ones we're probably going to look towards objecting to, and ideally you would see some overlap in both categories. But like I said, our final decision in terms of what establishments to object to is going to come down to whether or not we have legally sufficient, substantial, reliable, and probative evidence to go through, to go forward. Once those meetings are through, once we reviewed the evidence, we would then ask the city attorney to make his recommendations to council as to which establishments we recommend their liquor permit be objected to. At that point, city council would make a decision as to whether or not to ask for a resolution to the Ohio Division of Liquor Control to ask for a hearing on that particular permit. That resolution in and of itself is the objection to the liquor permit renewal. At that point, we would be considering a hearing, a public hearing at the Division of Liquor Control. This, frankly, is why I am particularly the one that is speaking here today. I would be the individual that conducts the hearing, represents the city. The hearing would be held at the Division of Liquor Control, and it would be held in front of a hearing officer. I would present the evidence that we were able to establish for each liquor establishment. That would go, again, in front of a hearing officer at the Department of Liquor Control, and I would represent the city. The types of evidence that are common are officer testimony, witness testimony, and paper evidence, police reports, liquor violation reports, code violations, things of that nature. Additionally, the permit holder would also be there, be allowed to be there, and can have an attorney representing himself, or the permit holder, him or herself, could also represent themselves, go pro se. So at that point, they may, like I say, may present evidence, and the division makes a decision. We don't make a decision. Council doesn't make the decision. The Division of Liquor Control will make the decision. They don't make the decision on the day of the hearing. Typically, it takes 3 to 5 weeks to get a decision out of the Division of Liquor Control. If the division rules in our favor and sustains the objection to the permit renewal, therefore not allowing the establishment to have their permit renewed, then we get into the process of appeals. The permit holder has 30 days to appeal. I would say more often than not, a permit holder whose liquor permit is not renewed ends up appealing. Not all the time. Sometimes it stops at that stage. But I would say more often than not, they do appeal within that 30-day window. And the appeals technically could go up to 4 levels, but practically typically stay at the first level. The first level would be an appeal to the Liquor Control Commission. This would be a 3-member panel of the Liquor Control Commission. The permit holder can make their case on their appeal of the department's or the division's decision. At that point, the Attorney General's office, for the most part, takes over the case from us. However, the City Attorney's office, myself, we would be the second chair in that and certainly communicate with the Attorney General's office in which direction to go forward. If the permit holder is unsuccessful on his or her appeal at that level, then they can appeal up to Common Pleas Court. This is very rare, but they can appeal up to Common Pleas Court. From there, they can appeal to the 10th District Court of Appeals, which is obviously even more rare, and then technically could appeal to the Ohio Supreme Court, which is obviously does not happen very often. Just to kind of briefly recap our 2011 objections, as far as our initial evidentiary review, there were over 100 establishments investigated throughout the year. From that, we were able to determine 9 establishments that we felt had that burden of evidence, that legally sufficient, substantial, reliable, and probative evidence to move forward. 9 establishments. Those 9 objection recommendations to the City Council were made by City Attorney Pfeiffer, and the 9 of them were made by the City Council. Of those, all 9 of the hearings at the division have already been conducted. We do have 1 establishment where the ruling is being. Do not know the outcome of that yet. As for the others, we have so far 6 objections upheld, so that means the permit was not renewed. We have 2 that were overruled, so that means the division allowed that permit holder to renew his permit. And like I said, we have a waiting division order. Of the 6 where the objections were upheld, 4 did not appeal. One did appeal to the Liquor Control Commission. They're awaiting a hearing. And 1 is still within that 30-day window where we are awaiting their decision whether or not to appeal. And at this time, that's all I have. Thank you, Councilmember Mills.
Thank you, Attorney Swalaza. Councilmember Craig, I will offer an opportunity for you to raise some questions before I put forth my several questions that I have. So you have any questions at this time?
Chairman Mills, I don't have any questions right now, but I certainly want to acknowledge your leadership, your important many of your important steps regarding this matter. I certainly want to acknowledge the work of the city attorney and his staff and our safety forces. This is an extremely important issue. I appreciate you going through those steps because as the city attorney has already well articulated, we don't take this issue lightly. We don't act on it with haste. We really try to go through the issues with a lot of clarity. In many cases, those most serious cases, as the city attorney knows, we've had issues where there's been a great deal of violence. There has been considerable police runs involving either violence or other kinds of issues. underage drinking. And so we look at this issue very carefully, very seriously. And so I appreciate your efforts in informing the public, your thoroughness in this, and certainly in inviting public comments so that there is fairness and as we obviously observe the due process of all of our citizens, but certainly understanding the importance and what this means to our city and the quality of life in our city. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Councilmember Craig. Absolutely. One of the most important parts of this is educating the community and hoping that we continue to get the level of engagement that we received this year. I want to again take this opportunity to remind folks who may have joined us recently that if they are interested in speaking, that there is an opportunity to turn in a speaker slip until 5:30. The speaker slips can be found at the entrance of chambers. So those of you who recently joined us, you may have the opportunity to speak if you so desire by turning in a speaker slip, and Annie Marsico, my legislative aide, will pick those slips up if you want to provide comment this evening during the hearing. Attorneys Palazzo, please know that many of my questions are for clarification and continued education of the community. The first question, I want to make sure we provide clarity about the number of letters that were sent, and it's my understanding we've sent nearly 400 letters out to the community soliciting engagement in the process. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, Councilmember Mills. The letter was sent, I believe, near the end of July of this year, and it also included my contact information, so if anybody had potential establishment, they could contact me directly.
Just to sort of help our community understand the length of the process, if you can offer a rough timeline, given that we have no control about hearing, scheduling, and some of those things that are beyond our control, but when folks can expect to hear roughly in terms of what recommendations have been made to council, and just kind of give a little bit of the timeline of the process.
Well, the process itself can be a long process. It's not quick. By way of example, as you saw on the slide, we still have, one case that's still within the 30-day appeal process or period, and one that's still pending. So these are cases that we were talking about this time last year that are still finishing up at the division hearing level. And we also have some cases that are still on appeal. So on the whole, the process can be, quite long. But in terms of when somebody could see whether or not we were going to recommend objecting to an establishment, I would say that would happen sometime near the end of the year.
And Chair, if I might just say that when City Council considers these resolutions, which will be later this year, those then are forwarded to the Department of Liquor Control. The scheduling then of the hearing is up to them. So while the community this year may be concerned about a permit holder, you're not going to see a hearing for 4 to 5 to 6 months down the pike. So you're looking at June of 2013. And then if it's appealed, you're looking further down. In some cases, it'll extend beyond 1 year before we get a final decision.
Thank you, Attorney Plaza and City Attorney Pfeiffer. That is, so just to help the community in terms of managing their expectations around, I sent that letter so long ago, Councilmember Mills, where is it at? What's happening? Why is it taking so long? Just to kind of give everyone a rough idea of the timeline. And so on that same line of thinking, sometimes the legally sufficient evidence provides some bit of frustration, I would suggest, for many of our community members, because the things that they may see, hear about is more or less hearsay as opposed to legally sufficient evidence. And is there any additional clarity that you would provide to the community at this time related to what they see and the information that we collect, in terms of the source of the information, and a little bit about what is actually a violation of the license versus some safety concerns? Any additional comment you would offer?
Yes. Like I mentioned, we do need legally sufficient, substantial evidence. And, a part of that evidence could be or can be what a citizen observes. And they might observe behavior at an establishment that they think creates a substantial interference to public safety, or where folks are operating in a disregard for the law. But I would say that's a piece of it, that the evidence that we're going to put forward has a broad scope, and it's going to have to include, very likely, criminal activity that's documented through police reports, police activity, criminal charges, criminal convictions. It's also likely going to have to include those aforementioned code-type violations, in particular, liquor violations. And again, be that establishments that serve alcohol past the appropriate hour that their permit allows, establishments that serve to underage patrons, establishments that keep an unsanitary bar, or unsanitary drinking facilities, or unsanitary kitchens if they happen to sell food. So those types of things, you know, they need to be documented, and those things, in addition to some testimony from citizens in that area that can testify as to how that establishment negatively affects the neighborhood. That's helpful, but it's just a piece of the puzzle, and the puzzle's big. So we need. It's really, as City Attorney Pfeiffer said, it's a culture. It's a of City Attorney's Office, law enforcement, and the citizens to build.
Thank you. And my next question talks about just what you began to discuss, and that is the engagement opportunities for the community during the process, whether it's at hearing and all of that. Can you talk a little bit about their ability to engage beyond the initial identification from a letter to hearing opportunities, and again, given the case-by-case basis of how we establish and collect the evidence related to the objections?
Yes. At the point where we have the division hearing, that's where I would represent the city, as I indicated, and I would present the evidence. I believe, it's my personal opinion, that testimony from a neighbor or a citizen or somebody who lives in the area who is directly affected by the establishment is very useful. And I would want to have. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, that we need 10, 20, 30 people down there, but it would be a scenario where if there was a citizen or an individual that had specific experiences with an establishment that demonstrate that it's unlawful or that it substantially interferes with public decency, they should contact me. They should let me know, you know, who they are, where they live in relation to the property, and give me some idea of what types of things they've been experiencing. I can't tell you that we would want or be able to put forward citizen testimony at every hearing, but I can tell you that, in my opinion, it's useful, it's effective, and I would be looking at it with an open mind, optimistically, to see if somebody might be called in as a witness, and at that point, I would issue a subpoena for them through the Division of Department of Liquor Control. They could come to the hearing, and there would be a witness that I call a stand, and they could testify through that process.
Thank you very much. And my next question is, in terms of the appeal process, can you share with the legal ramifications of, if they're in an appeal process, can they continue to operate? What happens to the license? Is it suspended? All of that during that appeal process. What can the community expect if they know that in that 30-day window, so that if they hear or contact our office and we announce the status of that the objection has been upheld, but there's that 30-day window, what can they expect to see related to those establishments' ability to operate?
I cannot tell you for sure, but I believe that the permit holder can request a stay of their permit being rejected pending the appeal. I believe they'd have to specifically request it, but they can stay that process, and what that means, allowed to on that permit while the appeals process is going forward.
That is the normal. We'll win at the division level, but it'll be appealed to the control. Citizens will say, well, I thought you guys won. Yes, but appeal right, and they have a right to continue to operate until a final decision is made.
Thank you both. And my next question is in regards to our ability, test rate in 11, is that typical, common, in other years, is it different? Can we do similar, because we are very clear up front about the evidence before even moving towards recommendation, or for council to adopt a resolution for the request for the hearing? And can you discuss in terms of our success rate as long as we've had the ability to object?
Well, like I mentioned before, as right now, in terms of cases that have been decided at the division level, we're 6-2. 6-2. So that's a pretty good record, and we're happy with that. But I think the reason that we have a good record, the reason that we've had success in this process, isn't because, you know, most things we object to, we win. I would say that's not the reason. I would say the reason is at that age where we discuss the evidence with Columbus Police Detective Brown, where we evaluate the cases. The reason we're so successful is diligence at that stage, is making sure that we are objecting to the establishments, for lack of a better word, that deserve the objection, that have that legally sufficient substantial evidence, that we're confident moving forward that we're going to be able to present a case to the division that's strong and compelling. So let's say it's not that everything we object to we get success. It's that we pick good establishments that have the requisite substantial evidence, and because we have good work from the Columbus Police Department gathering evidence and giving us the strong evidence that the division likes to see.
Madam Chair, if I might, it's very important. We don't file objections because we want to harass a permit holder. We want these permit holders to be successful in their business and run a good, law-abiding business. We will not take an objection to the Department of Liquor Control unless we really believe they've violated the law. Similarly, if you think about, we also prosecute criminal misdemeanor offenses, and this is an aside. We have an intake office on the 7th floor at 375 South High Street, and people come in all the time saying they're victims of crime, and they want us to file charges. You don't file a criminal charge unless you have probable cause. You have to have sufficient evidence. We don't just harass people because someone wants us to. Likewise with the permit holder. We don't harass permit holders. We simply ask them to follow the law, and if they don't, we object to the renewal.
Thank you, City Attorney Pfeiffer. Certainly the comment that, as I met with some of the groups, I talked about that we want to make sure that businesses are operating and law-abiding. We want to support them if they're thriving, if they're operating within the law, not to just snatch away what is some of the bread and butter to their business, but we want them to be operating as law-abiding operations. So thank you for that. And I have another question and a comment. My comment on the batting average, I think there are a lot of baseball teams that would trade you for that average that you have. That 6-2 is pretty good. I want to ask the question related to, is there any other legal recourse that we would like to share with the community if, in fact, that substantial evidence at that time when we're doing our due diligence before the recommendation goes in front of council, that we think about or consider when there are other extenuating circumstances, health violations, nuisances, or any of those other legal recourses that I know we have discussed. Could you share a little bit about that with the community?
Well, the other type of legal recourse that might be involved in an establishment such as these would be a nuisance abatement filing, and that's it's complicated, but the types of violations involved in a nuisance case are similar to those of a liquor permit objection case, by and large. So my opinion on it is that, in general, if you don't have the appropriate evidence to go forward on a liquor permit objection, it's unlikely that you're going to have the evidence to go forward on a nuisance abatement.
Madam Chair, if I might, through the work of Sergeant Latta in the Division of Police, several years ago there was created a team. It's called the NAG team, the Nuisance Abatement Group. That group meets every month. And who meets? Well, you have the police, you have code enforcement, you have the health department, you have fire, and you have the Division of Liquor Control. And they all get together and they all say, what are you hearing out there in the neighborhoods about problem establishments? They then will decide what establishments that as a group they will go and inspect. Because if you have a liquor permit, they all can go in together and make their inspections. And this kind of coordinated effort is very effective. And if we don't have sufficient evidence on liquor violations, the law does allow us that if we can show substantial secondary negative effects that this establishment has in the community, we can go after them with nuisance abatement. And quite frankly, sometimes we find that more effective. And here's what happens a lot of times when we do that. The patron, the permit holder realizes we've got some good evidence. So we'll sit down with them and say, now do you want to start to run a lawful business? If so, let's get an agreed injunction that you'll start doing things correctly. And sometimes we're very successful with that.
Thank you, City Attorney Pfeiffer. I wanted to mention that, and I've had the experience of going out with NAG and seeing how that process absolutely is effective. And when you have folks, to your point, that want to begin operating a law-abiding operation, we can certainly get them on board and make them more of a partner with our neighbors and our citizens than they have been in the past. So I want to thank everyone involved with NAG because, as you mentioned, it's a coordinated effort and it's a very effective effort that happens out in the community. I also wanted to take this time to make sure that everyone's aware 5:30 has arrived, and we do have 4 speakers as we move into the most important part of this hearing, and that is the public testimony. Also, Attorney Sperlaza has been very gracious in shepherding me to attend some of the hearings for the liquor objections, and I can certainly see how he has been successful and how he has that batting average. At this time, I will ask that if you have completed a speaker slip, that you'll make your way towards the front as I call everyone to begin speaking. I first have Brian Scarpino, and again, apologize for any mispronunciations I have made this evening. If you would please state your first and last name and any organizations that you represent. And you have 3 minutes to provide any comments related to the liquor objection hearing.
Thank you, Councilmember Mills. You got my name correct. Thank you. I'm Brian Scarpino. I am the chair of the Livingston Avenue Area Commission. And on behalf of the commission, I want to thank you for taking up this public safety matter and also for bringing the loitering law that you were working on. All of these things are near and dear to our hearts. As you know, we had a investment at Livingston and Parsons with Children's Hospital. We're really trying to take that momentum farther east down Livingston to spur development and make happier communities where people want to live and play. So I just wanted a few questions here, particularly for Attorney Sperlaza, that maybe you can help us with. The first is there a difference between renewal objections and issuance objections? Can I go through these so I get them all in my 3 minutes? The next one is if your initial petition, we had 5 last year, and we submitted 5 last year for consideration, and we never heard anything back. I wasn't sure if it didn't get there, or if, but is it protocol that you would let us know these didn't make the cut? You said that about 7 out of 100 were taken seriously. I don't know if these made them, but I did print out the letter from last year, and I'll be happy to give it to you. They're the same places we're going to talk about this year. The third question is, you said that there's liquor license objection and nuisance abatement. Was either of these tools used in the Main Street dryout? Because our problem with the Main Street east of downtown got all of their liquor licenses voted out somehow, it seems. So our problem is pretty much carryouts and open-air drug markets that promote prostitution up and down Livingston. Although some of these have been cleaned up in the past couple of years, it's still stymieing development and growth. So I wanted to know, was the Main Street dryout, was that something related to this or the nuisance abatement, or is that something completely different, and might that be a better tool because of the breadth of our problem? And then, let's see, are carryouts harder to revoke licenses than bars and restaurants? because it seems like a lot of the proof that you mentioned that would make it a more hardy objection were things like cleanliness and underage serving. If it's carryouts and the problems are people loitering out front, selling drugs, making other businesses close, making people move away, and all of the boarded houses we have as a result, are those evidence that would work for this, or would that be better suited for a nuisance abatement? We'll certainly look forward to working with you. I'm really glad that the city's got this. I know that you aren't the decision makers, but the chance to get some of these questions answered and work together, it will be great. It'll help everybody. Thanks. Just under 3 minutes.
Thank you.
We're going to try to answer this as a team.
All right.
In reference to why you weren't informed about what happened to your request last year, that must have been a failure on our part.
Okay.
If you haven't gotten back to, then that's on us. So we'll try not to let that happen again.
We're all human.
As far as Main Street, what you had there was a very aggressive community that sought to dry up the area, and they did. So if you believe that these permit holders refuse to follow the law, then you can have a citizen action to take it to an election and try to dry up the area. As far as nuisance abatement, the various things that you see, if we can attribute those secondary negative effects to that establishment, we can have grounds to go to a court, and if we can show by clear and convincing evidence that that has created a nuisance, we can get a result. But it's not always. I think you're going to find that there is many people that have these carryouts, and they work really hard. They're hard-working folks. Now, sometimes they go on the dark side a little bit and do things they shouldn't. So I think you're going to find people being very careful about taking somebody's livelihood, but only if they can show that they're also having an adverse negative criminal effect on the neighborhood, then we can get there.
Okay. Yeah.
And as to your first question, renewal versus, I think you said acquisition or purchase of a permit.
Yeah, so we have a brand new one coming in that's next to a daycare, between two daycare centers. It's a carry-out, and we've seen how those work in our neighborhood.
In terms of, technically the process is different, but our ability to object is not. We can't. It is different how we go about objecting to those, but we have. And without getting into too much detail, we've objected to two in the last couple of months or what have you. But they can be a little harder to catch because they happen so frequently and under various names and LLCs and things of that nature. But the simple answer is yes, we can object to those.
And how council is aware of that, if I might, is if you look at a council agenda for every meeting, Communications to Council lists all the applicants for new permits, all the applicants for transfer of permits, and so a vigilant neighborhood group it helps council understand what's going on. So if you see something coming, let us know.
Whom?
You can let us, the city attorney, know, or frankly, you let Chair Mills know.
Okay.
Let the Mills team know. They'll find that.
And I think your last question was carryouts versus bars, restaurants. I don't think any one particular establishment's easier or harder than the other. It just depends on whether or not it's doing those types of things that creates that legally substantive evidence.
Yeah, I mean, whatever tools it takes, the liquor seems to be a symptom of the bigger problem that we're having, but we don't want to take away good business either, and that sometimes it's intimidating to have a group of people outside selling drugs. So whatever toolkits we can bring to these business owners, we're going to work with public safety and with City Council to help see which ones are good and can float to the top and which ones we need to aggressively pursue so we can get some positive development along Livingston. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Scarpino. I think you've highlighted an issue that I've heard from several block watches about issuance and permits. And again, the agenda that is published for City Council lists that on the first page. And so again, as City Attorney Pfeiffer mentioned, you can inform my office and let us know if there are some concerns. The trickiness is in the names and the operator and who's applying and all of that, that it may not catch your eye, but stay aware of that. And if you have any questions, just let us know, and we'll try to find out for you if there's any connections. If you suspect that to be a similar operator that you've had problems with before, just they change the letter in the name or whatever that is to obtain the permit, let us know. You may have more on the ground information about that than we do. So just let us know. And next we have, for speaker slip, Diana Budding. Thank you, Diana, for coming down. If you will please restate your name and any organization that you represent. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, my name's Diane Bunning with the Walnut Heights Block Watch. Our concern is a bar and a grocery on Lindora Drive. It's been an ongoing problem. We've had 2 shootings down there. They're selling stuff out of the car trunks. The police are there constantly being called. 80% of our robberies and our burglaries in our neighborhood come within a 2-block range of that area. We have it adjoins with an elementary school. We have a daycare that can't stay operating because of the bar and the grocery and all the drugs and the gangs hanging out there. And most of these people are not even from our neighborhood that's hanging out in this area. They're begging for money. I mean, I've went down there at the store selling illegal cigarettes. Oh, he's selling cigarettes, but he's opening packs of cigarettes, selling them one at a time. He's selling them to minors. And then you got the bar. They're all drinking outside. You got kids running in this mess. I don't know if they're giving it to the kids down at the bar or not, but it's just a complete mess down there. And we're trying to get some help. We got elderly there that are afraid that they won't even open their door anymore because they're afraid of these people that's down there. And these people have lived there since the place was built in the 60s. And we've had kids out there when these shootings are going on. This is the only strip mall. It's completely surrounded by houses. There's no other businesses in there. I mean, it's right smack in the middle of a neighborhood. We've got the Mayberry Park. We've got the church. We've got the elementary school right there. We need some help with these businesses. Thank you.
Is it Buddy? A few questions because I just didn't hear correctly. First, the block watch you're from, ma'am?
Walnut Heights.
Okay. And you mentioned both a bar and a grocery.
The grocery.
What's the name of the bar?
It's the Bluegill Bar, and it's at 4998 Lindora Drive.
And the grocery, ma'am?
It's right beside there, too. I'm not sure the address on it. The building, it's all one building.
So is the grocery also Bluegill? Same?
No, it's just called the grocery.
Just the grocery. Okay. And I would, say that, sale of single cigarettes, some of those cigarette tobacco violations, is an example of a type of criminal violation that
they're drinking outside, they're drinking with the kids.
In and of itself, it's certainly not enough, but it's a piece of the puzzle that we talked about earlier. Thank you, Ms. Booty. I will take that under advisement.
One question also, the witness, I might. Are you aware of the police officer who's called a community liaison officer in your neighborhood?
Yes, we work with our liaison officer. He's Officer James Poole, and he's worked with us on this situation. I messed up. I was trying to vote the area dry, and I messed up on a paper, so I'm going to try again next year to get that done also. But
Officer Poole is working with you?
Yes.
Let me ask a question I don't know the answer to. Is it an effective working relationship?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
As a matter of fact, the bar filed charges against the police department once. Thank you. Thank
you, Ms. Bunny. I appreciate you coming down and your commitment. I just want to confirm for you before you go away, Ms. Bunny. I just want to make sure we have received a letter from you. Is that correct? Right. Related to okay, thank you. Next, I have Carol Chastain. Again, my apologies. On Carl, I've said Carol. I see an O somewhere, Carl. My apologies. Thank you for coming down. If you could please restate your name so that I can get it right the next time. I appreciate it, as well as any organizations that you may represent.
Sure. My name is Carl Chastain, and I'm representing, I'm the president of the Walnut Heights Civic Association. Sorry, let me adjust this mic here. First off, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for coming out. Appreciate you taking your time and just listening to our story here. I'm coming to speak to you about an ongoing issue in our community at Walnut Heights that we're having. We take pride in our community. And we're not really here to ruin an individual's business. We actually prefer to support them as much as we can. But we do need help with especially the Bluegill Bar and Grill. Once again, it's at 4998 Lindora Drive. This has literally been a community concern for over the last 3 years. I have 4 quick points to make about it. First off, I'm not quite sure who thought of the idea of putting a bar directly in the middle of a residential area. That definitely creates safety hazards on Lindora Drive, creates safety hazards on Carbondale Drive in the early evening hours and all the way until the late weekend hours. The amount of additional activity that is happening within this commercial property tends to bleed over into the park area, bleeds over into the school, Mayberry Elementary, that's literally directly behind it. This includes drug usage, possible prostitution, trash and debris blown across the park, and literally this comes from the patrons of the bar, and this is something I've personally witnessed. I've literally watched somebody come from the bar and throw trash, urinate in the park, and we know that we have our community liaison, but they can't be there all the time. The third is the consistent police runs for disturbance and nuisance issues, destruction of property, and general residential disturbances for homeowners and renters within a 2-block radius of the bar. And the last thing is something I take very seriously, is the under the influence drivers that are leaving the bar at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's not like having a bar on a main strip. You're talking about them actually driving through a neighborhood under the influence with children, elderly. There's people out walking their dogs. We were hoping that the business would be able to self-regulate. Our block watch has tried to reach out to them to come to some consensus, so we have tried. We do have a daycare there. The parents would love to patronize it, but they will not send their children there out of fear of what's happening at the bar and all the disturbances that seem to migrate within that 2-block radius of the Blue Grill. So once again, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to at least speak on behalf of this. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Thank you, Mr. Chastain. And as we talked before about some of these issues related to establishment and, again, the good working relationship with your community liaison officer, and I know that we'll follow up on some of these other concerns, but there is one question that you raised with me when I met with the Block Watch group that I want to provide an opportunity for the city attorney's office to also answer in terms of the letter of the law related to proximity of liquor license and schools. I believe you raised that question with me at the Block Watch group, if there is anything, because of Mayberry, I believe, Elementary, it was your concern about the close proximity and operation and the zoning about that. But again, I don't want to put them on the spot, but I know that that's an answer that I need to get back to you on.
Okay.
So I just, if there is any comments that you all would like to offer at this time on that, if not, I'll do some exploring and get back to you on that, because I know that's an open question that I need to get back to you on.
Oh, thank you.
We'd like to get back to you on that also.
Okay.
I appreciate it, but I just want you to know I haven't forgot it, because it's raised about the proximity within schools and where children are playing and all of that, if there is anything in the law that talks about that, and I believe that will be in zoning. So I'll get you an answer. I haven't forgotten. Thank you again, Mr. Chastain, for coming down. And I also wanted to take this time, as I had said, to the Walnut Heights Civic Association and the other Block Watch groups that were gathered for the Far East meeting, that in addition to the liquor objections, there is also an opportunity that I encourage our neighbors to thank and speak to the businesses who are operating well, so that they continue and know that that's appreciated, that when they're operating as lawful citizens, it is what they should do anyway. But the steps we take to talk about the ones who are not, if we can take adequate amount of steps to those who are operating, as we would hope, and that our good neighbors. Our last and final speaker for the evening is Commissioner Mustafa Shabazz. And if you would approach the podium, please restate your name and any organization that you may represent. And you have 3 minutes to provide comments related to liquor objection process.
Before we get the clock started, is there anybody from the Livingston Avenue area commission who took time out? Come on down. I need y'all to stand with me. Come on. Before we clock start, I want to thank you, Councilwoman Mills, Attorney Pfeiffer, Scarpino, or is that Scarpino over here? Okay, and Councilmember Craig for taking time out in your busy work day to listen to the business of the people. We really thank you for that. Come on, y'all. Come on down there. I ain't gonna bite y'all. Come on down here.
Well, I won't eat up your clock, so while they gather, I will take this time to thank each and every one of them for coming down and supporting. And I also want to mention that the Livingston Avenue Commission gathered quite a bit of data related to the establishments and have been very active in supporting and pointing out what they have observed and their concerns. I believe I have about an 8-page document from the commission that was a coordinated effort with many neighbors, and I think many of those that I see here this evening in that effort. So I want to say thank you, because as I talked about those who went above and beyond, that you are the group that I was referencing, and making sure that you collect whatever you can to help us with that legally sufficient evidence and that due diligence that we must do, making no guarantees that all of that evidence that gathered would allow us to move forward on an objection or be successful, but it is appreciated and well noted.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Mills. We the residents, represented by the Livingston Avenue Area Commission, Driving Park Civic Association, Old Oaks, and Hanford Village, we object and ask you to deny the pending liquor license for the establishments. These are the establishments. The first one is at 1475 East Livingston Avenue. That's a pending license. This establishment is directly across from one daycare center, and there's a couple doors up from another daycare center. Denying this license will not create any business interruption for this establishment because this is not yet an open business. In fact, the rent office sign is still there. Also, code enforcement, the drain permit pulled this permit at this address, and it's inappropriate for care. So that's one that's trying to come up. But the ones that who are already established and have had all kind of relations are 940 East Livingston Avenue, 981 East Livingston Avenue. These are the ones we're asking y'all to object their permits to. 1065 East Livingston Avenue, 1079 East Livingston Avenue, 1081 East Livingston Avenue, 1475 East Avenue, 1535 East Livingston Avenue, 1619 East Livingston Avenue. Also object to all licensings in the LAAC area based on the grounds set forth code 4303.29282. The dense concentration of alcohol selling establishments is as follows: in 9/10 of a mile, a 2-minute drive, a 17-minute walk. There are 9 bus stops and 8 establishments that sell alcohol. This excludes the license pending approval. The loitering, prostitution, criminal, and other illegal activity has placed an excessive burden on law enforcement and the community, meaning that, you know, in a nutshell, I needed to give these addresses in a nutshell. I needed to identify at least some of the codes. We've admitted some of more detailed information to Councilwoman Mills. But to say that Livingston Avenue's perception of all of these, I don't know who's working the sound, but the Livingston Avenue perception has went to pretty much, I have no idea what's doing that. Okay, all right. That it's difficult to attract businesses. It's difficult to attract new up-and-coming residents. It is difficult to do the economic development that we are trying to do. And the first thing on the agenda that we are trying to do is pretty much dry up Livingston Avenue. And I think as we can dry it up, and alcohol being that root, that ground thing to a lot of the prostitution, to a lot of the crime, to a lot of the police runs, to a lot of the fire runs, to the whole perception that Livingston Avenue will never reach its potential until we dry up this community. And if you have any questions for my neighbor, here they are, right here.
Well, welcome, neighbors. I'm going to ask the city's office to talk about saturation. I believe that was one of the topics when I met with the Livingston Avenue with Commissioner Shabazz and Commissioner Wolf about the saturation of liquor establishments in Livingston Avenue.
Well, the reality is if they're already there, they can stay there unless they're violating the law. Now, your effort to dry up the area sounds the way to go. But you are correct that if you can show that their presence has affected the decency of the area, there are some cases that could be made there. We think gathering that evidence to successfully deny renewal is going to be difficult, but it's something we can try.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you again, Commissioner, and all of the neighbors for coming down. And we have the letter, and we're looking forward to additional letters from you regarding some other safety strategies that you would like to see in your neighborhood. So I know that this is one part, and I appreciate you going with us in every strategy that there is to help improve the safety of your neighborhood, because it's not just the liquor objections or the establishments, it's the other things that you mentioned that are happening in your neighborhood that we have other strategies to address, such as safety cameras. So I appreciate all of your hard work and engagement, because that's what's going to improve the safety of all of our neighborhoods. Thank you again for coming down.
Thank you very much, Council.
Again, I want to thank everyone for coming down and participating in tonight's hearing on liquor permit renewal objections, as well as the listening audience, those who may not have been able to make it down but have decided to tune in. I appreciate it, because the number one goal of this evening, and as I always think about hearings, it is to educate. And so if everyone in this audience has learned at least one thing about improving the safety of their neighborhood, then we have had a successful hearing. And so I'm hoping that not only those here, but our listening audience has at least learned one tool or one way of which they can contribute and engage in improving the safety of their neighborhood. It is extremely important that we partner to improve neighborhoods that makes an overall improved city as it relates to safety. I want to thank all of the city departments, the Division of Police, City Attorney's Office, just the overall safety department and all of their contributions. My staff, otherwise known as Team Meals, and all of their hard work and their active engagement, whether it's going on NAG runs or their engagement in understanding how this whole process works so that they can answer questions of the constituents. Devin Perils and Annie Marsico are a part of Team Meals that get back to the constituents related to this important issue. I want to again remind everyone that September 21st is the cutoff to receiving letters related to objections. Keep that in mind. Today is the 12th. The 21st is a day so that everyone can get in letters if they have not yet done so related to liquor establishments of which they would like for us to consider objections. Again, thanking the City Attorney Pfeiffer, who I cannot say enough about in working with since my tenure on council. He's just tremendous, and I don't think we say that enough to him and in public, but he is and his staff are just as diligent in protecting the city as they do all of their hard work. So thank you, Attorney Spalaza, and all of the members of Division of Police and the NAG group and many others who make sure we have a safe city. Again, if you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to contact my office, and please have a safe and wonderful evening.